Welcome to the Bergstrom Bunch podcast. I'm Jason.
And I'm Kathy.
Today we're talking about 5 things I wish I would have known about marriage.
Okay, so before we dive into this, I just got to give as a precursor, let everyone know that you and I did not collaborate on these 5.
That's right.
So you have 5, I have 5.
And we don't know what each other wrote.
We don't know.
So
we
we're
have
going to
no
discover
idea.
together.
So,
But we're thinking, so we've been married 27 and a half years, a little more than that. But we want
halves make a difference.
It does make, well, the younger you are, the more it makes a difference. But we're thinking about, like, what advice would we give to our younger selves going into this? Yeah? So 5 things. We'll just go one at a time. And ladies first, we're going to start with you.
Actually, no, you go ahead and dive in.
Me? Okay.
You go ahead and dive in.
Okay, number 1, and these are in no particular order. Number 1 is you are not unique.
You are not unique.
You are not. So what I mean by that is your love story is not the greatest love story ever. Like, just because you have tremendous feelings for each other doesn't mean that you're going to avoid the challenges of every marriage.
True.
Right? So when I think of challenges, there's selfishness. We all come into this with a bit of selfishness or pride. Yes. Another challenge is hormones. It happens, right? Mm-hmm. Poor communication, yes. Disappointment with each other. So there's these speed bumps ahead, and you're not like this Romeo and Juliet extraordinary couple that's
the Notebook. Any
your
romance.
Your love you feel right now isn't just going to automatically carry you through to the end.
No, absolutely
You're not unique. You look at other couples that have had to go through some things, like, that's not going to be us.
So right out of the gates, we have to go with a negative. Like, you're not unique. If you thought you were, throw that idea out of the window. Okay, so let me throw out mine.
Okay. I'm
my
racing.
First one.
I'm hanging out. I'm ready.
Okay. So this has positive and negative connotations, that marriage changes us, either for the better or the worse. And that's why we always ask the kids, if they're interested in someone, are you guys better together? You know, the qualities and habits that we have when we're dating carry into the marriage. So you have to look at how someone spends their time, their tendencies under pressure. What do they do when they get angry? What kind of temper do they have? What is their view of the world? Are they optimistic, pessimistic, a combination of both? Because all of those things come into play once we're married, and that's going to change who I am based on your behaviors and who you are based on mine.
It brings those things to the surface, but then it's kind of like this soup. It just kind of mixes all together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's, either we're going to become the best version of ourselves or become someone we despise simply because of what our partner brings out in us. So, and actually, I'm going to dive into number 2 then for me, because it lends to that number 1, which is why I let you go first.
All right.
Okay, this one. When emotions are high, wisdom is low.
Okay. I've heard that.
So before. I wish for myself that I had sort of a strategy that I could have implemented with the thought of, like, being quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, that I would have had some sort of strategy where I can say, hey, let me back up, let me have my space, let me have my moment in a very nice way. And, like you mentioned, hormones. And so certainly when you have that monthly visitation, emotions are high and logic can be low, rationale can be low.
Don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, and then 2, of course, if you decide to move into the direction of having children, pregnancy, you just don't want to mess with that. You don't mess with a woman when she's pregnant. Forget that business.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm glad you agree.
Oh, yeah, we agree. All right. So number 2 for me is never assume the worst.
Never assume
the worst. So when someone says something hurtful or does something neglectful, it doesn't mean that they meant to be hurtful or they meant to be neglectful.
Okay.
And the saying is, hurt people hurt people. So when someone hurts you, when your partner hurts you, you need to dig deep and figure out, where's this coming from? And usually you'll help me understand that I was ultimately the cause of the hurt that you're now delivering to me. So it takes time to dig deep.
Tendencies, yes.
But don't assume that they're trying to tear you down or tear you apart. Yes. Dig deeper, let the emotion blow past and figure out where the root cause of all this hurt is. But just don't assume that they hate you, that they never want to see you again, that this is the beginning of the end. Well, you talked about
Or
when
is
emotions are high.
is it that big of a deal? Really,
Yeah.
asking yourself, is it that big of a deal?
Exactly.
Whatever the circumstances, whatever the situation is. Am I making too much of this or not? And I will say though that in the heat of the moment, it's really hard to think rationally like that. Am I really making a big deal out of this? Because then your mind goes in so many different directions as to, well, if I don't make a big deal out of it, then this is going to happen in the future and this is going to continue and all of these different things. So yeah, that level of communication, self-communication, like how I'm speaking to me in the moment, and then communication with the partner is definitely so vital. Yeah. Wish I would have known some of that too before getting married. That would have been very beneficial to you, correct?
All right, number 3. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, hit me.
Okay, so for me, how much our individual and combined time with God affects the quality and intimacy of our marriage. Just me having my time to hear from God and to have that self-evaluation, that reflection, and look at who I'm becoming, and then our combined time, who we're becoming together as a couple, and that level of maturity. And I just think about so many times where I've spent extended periods just praying and hearing from God, and how He would lay things on my heart, like maybe neglectful areas where you're concerned, or even where our children are concerned, or areas that are trouble areas, where our kids might be struggling through something and I don't even know about it, but God brings it to my attention to talk to them about certain things. And then too, how our relationship with God impacts so much, or enriches our physical intimacy. Brittany's probably over there going, cringe. I really want to hear that, Mom. But it does. It makes a huge difference in just the level of intimate connection that you have with your spouse.
Yeah, good.
So, all right. You want to knock this one
Yeah.
apart?
So my number 2 is never assume the worst. Number 3 is never assume the best.
Oh.
Okay,
Ouch.
so no. So you got to think about it this way. When I was a regular motorcycle rider, like for decades, that was my main form of transportation. I never assumed that ride was going to go awesome. I always wore my helmet, my boots, my gloves, my jacket. But more than that, I didn't, because the motorcycle was fine the day before, I didn't assume it was fine today. Check the tires, make sure they have air, make sure you have gas in your gas tank. None of my motorcycles had a fuel gauge.
You're coming more from the perspective of the condition of the marriage. Never assume the best, that it needs maintenance.
The condition of the marriage, but also your condition. Just because I told you I love you when we got married doesn't mean you still know it. I can't assume, because you're strong spiritually, I can't just assume, and you were strong yesterday, I can't assume that today's a day of strength for you.
True.
So I need to continually lift you up in prayer.
This is why women need chocolate and flowers and dates.
And prayer.
And romance and prayer, yeah.
But don't assume the best. Don't assume that everything is awesome because last week was awesome. But I need to assume that you need my prayers, that you need my support, you need my encouragement, my attention.
Well, and I think that the more time you're spending with God, the more creative you get in demonstrating that love for me through a variety of ways. So I think all of these flow together very much. So overlapping. It's interesting, again, that we didn't collaborate with these, and yet they really are cohesive. So, you want me to?
All right, number 4. Here you go. Here you go.
Okay, so number 4, and this one does hit home for me because I've had a lot of pain in my life. But how destructive harboring bitterness towards others can and will affect your marriage and subsequently all your relationships. So it's so easy life happens, things happen, and number one, I see so many couples that it's just such a sad situation because they've had so much pain in their relationship, and that pain has never been resolved, and so there is a lot of bitterness, maybe on one side, maybe on both sides, and all of that unresolved. You can just see that they're both very unhappy beings, that they certainly are not living out the best version of themselves because there's just so much tension there and so much hostility towards one another. But then also I see, I'll use my grandmother as a prime example. She had so much hurt, so many different things happen in her life, and she held on to bitterness till the day she died. And when I was taking care of her all the time. She would bring up people that were dead and had been dead for decades that had hurt her way back once upon a time. And in all of her relationships, it was very destructive because that bitterness, that harbored bitterness, came out in her personality.
Yep.
And it was like she could be content or happy for a moment, and then the moment you were to comment on, her happiness, or you were to comment on certain things, she would just dive right back in, to that
Be a
bitterness.
nice day having coffee and trail mix.
Yes.
Yeah,
And it was always projected at someone.
Yeah.
Because that anger wells up inside of you, and then it's always projected somewhere. And then, I mean, for me as well, like I've mentioned in the past how I grew up, and much of the verbal abuse that was passed on to me came because the woman in my life for my formative years just had so much bitterness inside of her. She was just bitter at life. Like life handed her a raw deal, and just bitter she was the type of person that so much bitterness that if you had joy, she couldn't help but to steal it from you. She was a joy thief. And I think that's what bitterness creates is somebody becoming a joy thief. Yeah. That you start, because you're so angry and you have so much welled up, you can't help but to steal from others to try to make yourself feel better. Yeah. So that's something that I wish, going into marriage, that I just having that at the forefront of my mind. How destructive holding on to that is, and just the person that you become because of it.
Yeah. All right, my turn. Number 4.
Your turn.
Marriage requires creativity. So thinking in terms of trying to find ways to spend time together, especially starting off, everything's busy, work and trying to get the apartment or the house together. Yeah. Then there's young kids.
Well, marriage should be fun.
Mortgage. Yeah. We've started a business. We've been in ministry. Mm-hmm. The kids play sports. And so you have to be creative. Yes. And we found that we're not always interested in the same things.
No.
I like ninja training. I like mud runs. I like adrenaline. I like driving with sharks.
Yes.
And you like Jane Austen movies. And so
that's not really equal, but yeah. But I mean, we do have different.
Exactly.
But come on now, I've gone shark diving.
Yeah, I've gone shark diving.
And I did enjoy that until I found out the sharks really could bite me, and you convinced me that they were docile. Yeah. Then afterwards, and we just went hang gliding.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was fun. So, and heights are not necessarily my forte per se, and so I try to get out there and get at it. I've done a few mud runs as well and tried out some ninja. I'm just not naturally gifted at ninja. That's just not my jam.
Me neither, honestly. But
yeah. But fun. I mean, for a while I was into scrapbooking, and, Kylie and I started her little baking business, and we got into all the recipes and things like that. Your baking has been, you did make a pretty amazing apple pie one year.
One time.
Yeah, one time. So, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. And I remember when we first got married, actually, I had to work late that night at the photo studio. And so I pulled out a cookbook and had you make, I think it was lemon chicken or orange chicken, one of those two. But you went to the T. You went right down in every single ingredient, and then just the directions. You followed them to the T. Well, and I remember coming home.
I know how to measure a teaspoon.
And it was so amazing. I wish we still had that recipe, because that was something you could actually make. Now barbecuing, of course, is forget your happy place.
Well, yeah, we've got Tony Satch and the grill, so we're good to go there.
Yep.
But being creative and finding ways to be together, like marriage doesn't have to be boring. And
I would hope not. Who would want to get married if it's like, oh, and you're married now. Oh, now you're boring.
Well,
now you just sit and watch TV all the time together and get fat.
we don't want each other to be the same. The French would say "Vive la différence," right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the sparks happen. Is that we're different. Like, I didn't marry my clone, and so you have to embrace that. But
thank goodness I didn't marry mine either. We'd be boxing all the time. So I have dated some of those types of guys that are just like me. So,
all right, number 5, your turn.
Okay. So this is one going into marriage that I wish somebody would have sat me down and said, look, you and your spouse are one now. You're a team now. And that you need to be truly independent as a couple. Be truly independent, because oftentimes when you get married, some of the family expectations are still there. like always having family nights with the family rather than maybe deviating and having some of your own family nights. Outside influences, maybe friends, church people. Like there are expectations to when we were in church, beyond all the boards and committees, and we had a lot of separate activities. And so, building together is just so important. And I think that even though we both have individual things that we have that are interests, it's so important to not be in a marriage and be two separate people and not building anything together. And I've seen a lot of marriages like that. In fact, one of my family members, her marriage fell apart for exactly that reason. Her husband was going in one direction, she was going in another direction. And even though they both worked in the field of law, their journeys were just completely separate journeys, and they weren't even necessarily co-parenting together. He had his relationship with the kids, she had hers, and so the just even vacationing, oftentimes it would be her, taking the kids, or him taking the kids, or her taking one and him taking the other. So really just coming back to that, we truly are one unit now. We're a team together, and there have to be things that we're building cohesively.
Let me clarify one thing. You made a statement when we were in church. Church is still very much a big part of our lives. So maybe we think of it more now as we are church, and so people we're our church together.
Well, we're not in a church where there are a bunch of boards and committees.
Different context, yeah.
It's very different, and so, yeah.
So my number 5, you will make mistakes. That in a marriage, you're two imperfect humans. So today actually, we set a record for a marriage. Today, we've been married longer than we ever have been. Set a new record. So here's the thing. But
every day that's true. Every day that's
true. So every day we're in uncharted territory, pushing further away from the harbor than we've ever been. And so we're not gonna do this perfectly. We're going to make mistakes.
Well, and as you mentioned that too, when you start to think about the reality that you are going to potentially be married, I mean, unless your spouse passes away, God forbid, but you will be married longer or together longer than you were apart. So, we got married, I was 23 years old. We have been married double my lifetime, more than double the lifetime that I had prior to you.
Me too.
So, yeah, this is true.
So along the way, you need to forgive each other and understand that you're marrying someone who we all inherently look out for ourselves first. It's how we're hardwired, and we're going to make mistakes. We're going to hurt each other. And so there has to be grace. There has to be forgiveness, understanding that we're not going to be perfect at this. Yeah,
absolutely. And that really, what you just said kind of encompasses everything that I was getting to when it came to bitterness. Yeah. So recognizing that you're going to fail, your partner is going to fail, and that harboring, those feelings of ill will towards each other just is going to make both of your lives miserable, essentially. So I'm going to run through and just sort of recap each one of mine real quick. That my number 1, although these aren't necessarily in order either, as far as like order of importance, it's just 5 things that I wish somebody would have said to me once upon a time, that I really would have pondered and thought through and kind of made a plan. That number 1, marriage changes us for the better or for the worse. That I'm either going to become better or worse, and so are you, because of the position that each of us have in one another's lives. We should be besties in every sense of the word, and trying to draw the best versions of one another out of each other. Number 2, when emotions are high, wisdom is low. So basically for me, it's like, that sort of means, zip it. Like, just don't say anything. Just don't say anything. Try not to allow those facial expressions to show, which I'm horrible at.
Go drive your convertible for a bit.
Go drive my convertible. Exactly. Having a plan. Like, just let me go on a drive real quick, babe. And then I'll be a much happier person when I come back. Okay, so in my number 3, how much our individual and combined time with God either enriches our marriage or doesn't, because you become a different person when you're allowing God to change you. So that regular time is just so important to, in the marriage context in particular, because we're with each other all the time. When we were dating, you could go home and I went home, and those were 2 separate residences. So you have that opportunity to get away from that person. When you live in the same house, and share the same room, you don't have an opportunity to get away. So really, how much of our time with God and allowing him to change us and help us to be sensitive to our partner's needs and just weigh things heavy on our heart that either need to be done or changed on behalf of our partner is just so crucial. And number 4, how destructive harboring bitterness towards others will affect the marriage and all of our relationships. Number 5, and this one is very important to me, that team that, you're either a dream team or a nightmare team. And really, if you're not building anything together, you don't really know each other with that certain depth of understanding, depth of like soul connection, as some would call it. I feel like certainly I can say I know you better than anyone else. You don't have a friend on this planet that knows you better than I do, other than Jesus, because he knows what you're thinking. And I probably don't always want to know what you're thinking. So anyway, you want to recap yours?
No, I want to close with, they can listen to it again for mine, but I want to close with a thought. This was on my list, but it's something that we knew, so it's not something I wish we knew, but you need to start with the end in mind. In other words, you go into a marriage with a commitment that this marriage is till death do us part. And no matter what, we're going to make it work. We're going to find a way that this is not something I can just throw away, get rid of, restart, find someone new. So with that mindset, you're not looking for someone new. You're not looking for a way out.
Yeah.
You're not looking for the exit. You're looking for the way to grow through it, to make it the best it possibly can be. So starting with the end in mind, I think that brings everything together.
And really, I'm just going to kind of, I guess, drive that home real quick by saying that, marriage should be something that is so sacred that we don't even view it as disposable. It should not be something disposable in our lives. And we should never be thinking that, well, if this person isn't this way or that way in 5 or 10 years, then I'm just going to throw this whole thing in the garbage. Yeah. And unfortunately, we live in a culture that's exactly what happens. And a lot of people just decide to live together and not get married because it's easier than to throw that relationship away than to have to go through the process of divorce. Yeah. So absolutely.
So they're practicing divorce from the start.
Exactly. So no, absolutely. I agree 100%.
But that commitment has given us a tenacity
yes.
to fight through, in a good way, to fight
yes.
through the challenges, to grow through them,
yes.
and to come out better on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, anything else you want to end with here?
I think
this is probably a quick podcast, but I think that we've covered quite a bit. And so anyone listening, I would just say, if you hope to be married one day or you're in a relationship right now, just really kind of go through some of the things that we've mentioned and ask yourself those questions and think it through. In part, that's going to give you the perspective to know if you have the right partner that's going to be for life. And or are you the right partner for someone else for life? And then make those modifications right now before you throw that ring on it and you say I do, or I should say before he puts that ring on it and you say I do.
Yeah. So I would end with this. First of all, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining in. But share with us. If you're married, share with us the things you wish you would have known going into it. We love to hear that. We love to hear feedback. We love to hear questions that you have for us about perhaps our journey, things we've learned along the way.
Yeah.
And as you listen, be sure and subscribe, like, follow, share, all those good things.
All those good things.
Yeah, if you got value out of this, someone else is going to. So share it. And help us get the word out.
And two, we really want to be sensitive to the needs that everybody that's listening to us has. So if there are topics that you would like us to cover, please absolutely send those to us so that we can cover whatever is on the hearts of the people that are tuning in with us.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for joining, and we will have you back again real soon.